12,000 years ago, in a Vietnamese cave, a razor-edged quartz shard struck a man's neck and wouldn't let go. Archaeologists call him TBH1, a rare, near-complete Ice Age skeleton from Tràng An, preserving the region's oldest mitochondrial DNA. His wound shows healing. Infection likely followed. He survived months before burial. Accident, hunt gone wrong, or the earliest conflict among hunter-gatherers. This story follows the evidence, from sediments to DNA, to ask what TBH1 reveals about violence, care, and endurance at the end of the Pleistocene. Want more stories like this? Subscribe. Limestone towers, river-cut caves, and dripstone chambers define Tràng An, a karst labyrinth in northern Vietnam. In one of these hollows, Thung Binh 1, TBH1, was laid to rest. Subtropical moisture and carbonate-rich sediments preserved and challenged his recovery, turning the cave into both archive and obstacle. TBH1 lived near the Ice Age's end, when climates swung and shorelines shifted. Human remains from this era are sparse here. Mobile foragers left light archaeological footprints. Against that backdrop, a near-complete skeleton with recoverable mtDNA is exceptional context for reading violence, care, and movement among small bands. In December 2017, an international team working in Thung Binh 1 exposed human bone amid cemented cave sediments. The individual, soon dubbed TBH1, proved unusually complete for the region and period. To prevent further damage, the team block-lifted skull and postcranial fragments, then spent months in the lab consolidating, separating, and refitting pieces into a readable skeleton. The skull was shattered and flattened, the pelvis and vertebrae were heavily fragmented. Yet much of the anatomy survived, including a full set of teeth, crucial landmarks for reconstruction and sampling. The near completeness makes TBH1 a rare Pleistocene case with multiple lines of evidence. Subtropical moisture and carbonate-rich drip sealed bone into sticky sediments. Water, calcite crusts, and cramped chambers slowed progress. Hence the block lifts and painstaking bench work that followed. Bone collagen was too degraded for direct AMS dating, so the team sampled charcoal from the burial deposits. Multiple measurements converged on approximately 12,000 to 12,500 years before present, anchoring TBH1 to the tail end of the Ice Age. Stratigraphy, refitting, and sediment characteristics support the association, making the context dates the most reliable clock for this grave. This timeline places TBH1 in a rare window. Terminal Pleistocene foragers, shifting climates, and rising seas reshaping Southeast Asia's human landscapes. Despite subtropical decay, TBH1 preserved analyzable mitochondrial DNA, the oldest yet from mainland Southeast Asia. Genetic review identified him as male and traced his maternal lineage to forager populations rooted locally, descendants of some of the earliest humans to enter the region. In a record starved of late Pleistocene individuals, that maternal signal anchors TBH1 within a real community rather than as an isolated outlier. The mitochondrial DNA points to continuity among small mobile groups linked by kinship and exchange. It fits a scenario of early migrations that diversified locally over millennia, gene flow without large-scale replacements, setting the stage for the cultural and biological mosaic later seen in the Holocene. Aside from a minor ankle lesion, TBH1 shows no chronic disease or malnutrition. Tooth wear suits a man in his mid-30s, stress markers are sparse. Pronounced muscle attachments point to an active forager used to climbing, carrying, and long walks. TBH1 had an extra neck rib, a rare variant. Its position likely channeled the quartz projectile, fracturing the rib and seeding infection. Near the right side of the neck, researchers recovered an opaque quartz fragment about 18.28 millimeters long, weighing roughly 0.4 grams. Its edges bear flake scars and retouch typical of late Pleistocene stone tools. No other quartz implements turned up in the cave, making this piece stand out, an odd visitor in a tool kit otherwise made from different stones. The shard's geometry and the break on the cervical rib point to a small, fast-moving projectile, something light with a sharp, worked tip. A larger weapon would have shattered more bone and likely killed on impact. Instead, the path seems oblique. Entry on the right neck. Force transmitted into the accessory rib, fracture, and embedded debris. The unusual rib likely helped catch the point, turning a glancing hit into a bone-breaking wound. Biomechanically, it reads as speed over mass, a dart or arrow-like strike rather than a heavy thrusting spear. The rib shows reactive bone and remodeling, signs of healing that take weeks to months. That delay matters. It means TBH1 lived with the injury long enough for infection to set in and ultimately to overwhelm him. He wasn't felled instantly in violence. He endured it, was likely tended to, and only later succumbed to complications seeded by that quartz point. No other quartz tools came from Thung Bin 1, yet the fragment bears clear retouch, consistent with late Pleistocene stonework. That mismatch hints at mobility or exchange, a curated weapon tip carried in from elsewhere, or a visitor's gear entering the cave's record. In short, the point looks non-local. A light, fast projectile fits a dart or arrow-like strike, plausible for conflict at a distance. Still, the case invites but doesn't prove violence between groups. A hunting mishap or interpersonal dispute remains possible. Either way, TBH1 captures contact across bands and the risks that shadowed Ice Age foragers. Healing on the cervical rib means survival. Survival implies care. For weeks or months, companions likely fed him, managed the wound as best they could, limited movement, and protected him during camp moves. In a small foraging band, where every adult's labor matters, that sustained help is meaningful. He was not left where he fell. He was buried inside Thung Bin 1, a deliberate choice in a known cave. Even without clear grave goods, placement and treatment signal belonging, memory, and shared norms around the end of life. Late Pleistocene human remains in mainland Southeast Asia a rare, often fragmentary, and DNA poor. Clear evidence of interpersonal violence is better documented in the Holocene. Earlier cases are sparse, making each well-dated individual disproportionately informative. TBH1 combines a near-complete skeleton, recoverable mtDNA, and unambiguous trauma with an embedded, likely non-local quartz tip. Healing shows survival and, by extension, care, while the projectile hints at conflict or hazardous encounters. Few single finds illuminate so many facets at once. To avoid further damage, excavators lifted skull and bone clusters in sediment blocks. In the lab, months of consolidation, gentle cleaning, and refitting turned fragments into a readable skeleton, enough to sample DNA, map trauma, and tie elements back to their cave contexts. Bone collagen was too poor for direct dating. Charcoal in the burial layer set the clock. Subtropical decay, calcite crusts, and heavy fragmentation complicate inference. So interpretations lean on context, replication, and caution. Accident, hunt misfire, interpersonal dispute, or intergroup clash all remain viable. The light projectile and non-local quartz lean toward contact between bands, but the record can't fix intent or context. Further excavations, quartz sourcing, petrography/trace elements, micro-CT of lesions, mobility/diet isotopes, and more late Pleistocene genomes could tighten timelines and test the violence hypothesis. TBH1 is a rare, high-resolution window onto the late Pleistocene, a near-complete skeleton bearing the region's oldest mtDNA, a healed but lethal neck wound, and a stray quartz point that may signal contact and conflict between bands. His survival hints at care, his burial at Tràng An affirms belonging. The evidence does not settle intent, but it reframes the period as social, risky, and profoundly human. As new excavations, sourcing, and genomes accumulate, this single grave will anchor bigger stories about mobility, violence, and compassion at the end of the Ice Age. Thanks for watching. If this deep dive into TBH1 sparked your curiosity, please subscribe and hit the bell. See you in our next adventure.